Good morning, everyone. Nice audience we've got for this session. So thank you so much for showing up. It's my pleasure to introduce Renee Ciezki this morning. She serves on the development committee for the AP Computer Science A exam as the College Board advisor. And before moving to Estrella Mountain Community College in Avondale, Arizona, where she teaches computer information system courses, she taught APCS for more than 20 years. As an endorsed College Board consultant, Renee conducts AP teacher workshops and has been an AP reader question leader since 2000. She also conducts AP study sessions for the National Math and Science Initiative, is a member of the CSTA leadership cohort, and serves as secretary for the Arizona chapter of CSTA. So we are really delighted to welcome Renee this morning. For most of you, you did get a handout dealing with the changes with a forms evaluation, and Renee has promised that it's the last slide on her session, so those of you who didn't get that form will be able to get the same information. So please join me in welcoming Renee.
Thanks. I forgot that somebody introduces you, so we can skip the first couple minutes of my talk when I was going to talk about myself. How many of you teach AP Computer Science A? Wow. How many of you have done it for 3 years or more? Oh, wow. Okay. Not part of my presentation, but on AP Central, there's some place where you can apply to be a reader. A bunch of you need to do that. It's an interesting experience. Anyway, I'm here to talk about some exciting changes and not so much changes for high school teachers, I don't think, because most of you probably have some hands-on experiences for your students. It's just something that high school students or teachers tend to do. And a lot of times I think college teachers tend to lecture a little bit more. It's easier for me to lecture now than it would have been 5 years ago when I had high school students, because they seem to take it better at college. Anyway, can't do this anymore with high school computer science. And I want to give you a little bit of the background. You've probably already heard that these new lab experiences are coming your way. The development committee works off of curriculum data from the colleges and universities that accept the credits for your students when they pass the exam. And the most recent curriculum survey showed that pretty much they did not care about the case study. There are a lot of good reasons for having case studies. We've had them for years and years, more than 20 years, I want to say. But there were probably other ways we could accomplish the same objectives and maybe do it with a little more flexibility and a little bit make it easier on the teacher. So since the statistics really were not all in favor of keeping it, only 4% said that they relied on the case study in determining credit. And I don't know, I'm thinking 4% out of 117, that might have even been a little misunderstanding in the question. And I think that when the college and universities see what we're offering instead, that'll be even better. Some of the things that we talked about, Grid World is big. There are only 4 parts that you have to do, but it takes some time. And it always breaks my heart to be grading a test at the AP reading and turn to a page where the student says, I'm sorry, but my teacher never taught us Grid World, or we just did the last 2 days before the test, and so I really don't know what to say for this question, and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of depressing. The labs would be a lot more flexible for the teachers, and they'd be easier to integrate throughout the school year. It's not the idea of a case study. The case study gave students this huge body of code and maybe some kind of a backstory, depending on which case study it was. where they could kind of step in and work with some really good, already developed code. They'd become familiar with all of the classes. They'd be familiar with some of the design components that went into it. And then when they come to take the AP exam, they could be given some pretty rigorous questions without having to go and read 5, 10 pages to get themselves the background information. They were supplied with the quick reference that lists the code that they need, and they're supplied with, you know, a few other things. But they're expected to know a lot of what they would have studied on the case study. With the labs, we're not doing that. With the labs, the teachers will teach the concepts, the content, the curriculum, the 7 topics in the topic outline. And these labs are just really what we feel are good ways to do it. So if you want to think about it, and I know this wasn't the College Board's intent, you are going to be given some really high quality curriculum materials, lesson plans, activities all ready to go that you wouldn't get for a couple of years unless you paid and went to a workshop. That's going to be part of the curriculum now. They'll be easier to integrate. They'll have real-world context. We're figuring that's going to increase student interest. I have done a little bit of piloting. I know that some of you have taken a look at the labs, and hopefully it does increase interest and excitement. I know in my case, just using some of the select activities and kind of what would be like a pre-AP course, I had students ranging in age from 18 to about almost 50, and we spent about 4 days on some of these activities in class, and it did really increase interest. And then the exam questions, as I said, can just focus on the concepts so that they won't have to be specific. You know, if a critter decides that it's going to now start eating critters, what do you have to change? Some benefits to the students, a lot of the same things that they have already been able to do when a teacher did a good job with the case study. Good examples, discussions about design, alternative approaches. A lot of times that gets lost in the grid world. These smaller labs, I think, are just set up better and intentionally designed to have those discussions. What would be a good way to do this? Have students analyze things that they deal with day to day. I'll bring up some examples of that so that they're able to think and relate this computer science stuff to the world around them. Oh, going the wrong way. All right, here's the timeline, and this was as of June. Now, I am going to see my College Board representative again later this week. As far as I know, this is still on target. You can get these draft materials for the labs. Paul Tiemann, the Development Committee College Chair, has set up this website, tiemann.us/, that is APCS_labs. And you'll have teacher guide. It says teacher guide. There are 3 labs, which I'm going to go into in a little bit of detail. Each one has a teacher guide. Each one has a student guide. And those are pretty much ready to go, except they say draft across the front, but you're free to use them with your students now. They just see how it works for you. And then code. The code ranges from starter code you would give students to the complete solution for everything a student is asked to do, plus enrichment activities. They're also in the teacher's guide most of the time. You will have the answers to all the different exercises. I say most of the time because sometimes you'll just get the answers from the completed code. February, there will be an updated course description. And there will not be any changes to the major topics. It's going to be mostly kind of a cleanup and I guess just giving you a little more information, making it a little easier to use. I don't know. I have had a lot of trouble trying to figure out what is part of the AP subset. Not that it's hard, but there were two different places. And you look at one, you go to the other one. Not to tell on anybody, but I was talking to two other members of the development committee, and the question came up, can we ask students to write an interface? We didn't know. It took us probably 10 minutes of digging through to figure out whether or not we could. And then the answer was we could, but we thought, you know, if we've gone this far without even knowing that, something's wrong. So that's going to be cleaned up. Yes, sir?
I may be the stupid one in the room, but there might be others, so I thought I'd mention it. I didn't realize that the URL is actually APCS underscore labs, because it's underlined like that.
Thank you. Good point. You all catch that? I can do this thing now. Thank you. All right. Where was I? All right, so it'll be easier to read. I know there are a couple of changes. When I say changes, one of the things that is in the course description now that has been recommended to be taken away is the stuff on hardware. You know, I don't remember what hardware you need. It's never been tested, so, okay, no hardware. De Morgan's laws, that was listed as something that's probably good to know, but they need to know all the Boolean stuff. Well, you know what? The ones who get taught those laws save so much time on the exam. We thought it's not fair, so we're going to say now teach De Morgan's, and it'll just be easy. So that's, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, that's two little Boolean things that they need to understand. Pretty easy. And that's about it. Just mostly clarifications. I think clarification on arrays, how a two-dimensional array is an array of arrays. We still won't be doing any jagged arrays or anything weird. I say weird, but I'll tell you a story about that, why I say that. Then the lab materials will be officially available. We're still talking about exactly how, probably from either the audit site or the teacher community, at least the teacher materials, because we don't want students getting it answered. Yes, sir?
So, you say February 2014. Does that mean we have to change our syllabus to reflect the new course description when we submit it for the audit in?
If you have not submitted one and you need to hurry up and submit it for next year, you would have to submit it with Grid World. If you've already had one, I don't really want to say because I don't think that decision has been made. Okay. It was originally decided that there would just be a form that you sign as kind of like a little add-on, and then it was, well, you know what, it's been a long time for some people, well, let's just do the syllabus, and I think the discussions are still going on. Okay. So I was at a meeting where the decision was going to be made, and we were going to announce everybody does a syllabus, and then they didn't.
But you'll communicate that to all of us?
You will be, yeah, you will have plenty of notice for that. Good question, though. So you can begin teaching the new labs anytime, and you will have the official finals in February of the school year coming up, but you need to start teaching them a year from now because that new curriculum will then be in effect. And I said not much changes. One major change is teachers must include at least 3 hands-on lab experiences for students. Now, you don't have to use these 3. If you have your own or want to make your own, that's fine. There are some guidelines, and you'll see those in the course description. Basically, they have to cover 20 hours. They have to cover different parts of the curriculum. If you see something that you do that you really like that covers everything one of these labs does, that's your choice. I just think these are some really cool activities given for free. And then in May, the test will reflect that. And what that means is no more grid world questions. This following May, May 2014, there will be 1 grid world free response, and there will be probably 5 to 8 or so multiple choice. But those will be the last of them. All right. So they'll just be tested on the concepts. Magpie, for example, deals very heavily with the string class and string methods, and there will be string questions. There always have been, and there always will be. So there's not a new thing to teach. The real world context is natural language processing. And do any of you talk to Iris? I talk to Iris. I have an Android, so it's Siri backwards. So that's what I named her anyway. But, you know, if we talk about things like that, that's a lot that I still find myself talking about the days of the old flat files when I used to live in this little town that had too long of a name, so my mail came to Lake in the High, and just, you know, the first 15, yeah, there are better ways to teach strings nowadays. And that's the main emphasis. There's some conditionals and iteration, arrays optional. There's an optional activity. Most teachers will probably use this near the beginning, and I'll go into a little bit more detail. I just wanted to give you a quick overview. The Picture Lab has some media computation type of exercises. We'll get your students very familiar with two-dimensional arrays. I don't know if you're familiar with the stages of knowledge. This is just one of those top of your head things, so hopefully I won't mess it up. But you start out being the, like you don't even know what you don't know, unconscious, incompetent. And then you learn that there are things you don't know, so you become a conscious incompetent. And then you learn that stuff and you become a conscious competent. Okay. And then you get to be an unconscious competence, like when you drive and you get home and you go, did I just drive 20 miles? That's where students will be with the two-dimensional arrays after doing some of these things. At least that's where one of my students was. And then 11s. It's a solitaire game using real cards, real card pictures. The GUI is supplied for you. It has a lot of optional extensions. It's very heavily object-oriented, as they all are good object-oriented examples. But there's a lot of talk in this one, or a lot of places to talk about design and programming. And again, I'll go through, I want to show you some examples of the kind of work that you do in each of them. All right. First of all, chatbot. I mentioned Iris because she wasn't on the list. Created by Lori White at Mercer University. Here's a sample of it running. It starts out, hello, let's talk, and then anything you want to say, you supply, and then there's an answer like, So you ask, do you like me? And it says, what makes you think that I like you? I speak French, you don't say, and I build robots. You confuse me, what makes you think that I confuse you? And so on. And that's something kids can get into. Notice that the first and last activities are optional. They can just do a little exploring about chatbots. And that array activity, I actually did with my students. I tend to show them the Java string API as a first look at an API. I don't know if that's a good thing or not because there's an awful lot to the string one. But this gives them an excuse to do it, and it's a focused way of handling it. I think it works pretty well. Let me go through those 2, 3, and 4 a little bit better. In activity 2, what I did was I used it to introduce the IDE because my students had never programmed before, and I just gave them these 2 files, Magpie 2 and Magpie 2 Runner, and I said, okay, take a look at the code. Now let's see if I can make this work. Here's an example this is not the code that they saw first, but here's an example of about the most complex part of Magpie 2. And sorry that that's small. I made everything else bigger and the last minute decided to show you this. But it's just the way that the Magpie object produces a response based on the statement. Okay, so I am really leaning more toward, here's how we get Iris to give a specific example if you use the word no in your question or comment, or to give the specific response, or if you mention one of these. Oh, by the way, that's called an if statement. It has an if, an else if, an else. You could have a whole bunch more else ifs. And then in my mind, it's like, okay, I taught that. No, seriously, I do a little better job. But compared to 10 years ago when we would take notes on relational operators and then logical operators and then do a worksheet of Boolean expressions. So this has worked for me, but I do have a different type of student than most of you do. Anyway, that's about as complex as it gets. The actual runner looks like this. We make a Magpie object of some kind. I called mine Magpie demo. Yes, sir?
You may have said this, I missed it, but what exactly is Magpie?
It's a chatbot.
Oh, okay.
And you get the greeting, call it a statement, basically, and then as long as it's not by, you get a response to that statement and get another statement. So now they've learned loops too. And to compare strings using the equals method. All right.
If we don't, are the questions on the new chest going to be related to these labs, or are these labs just to help teach those concepts?
Just to help teach those concepts. If you take a look at, well, the last released exam was pretty old, but the questions that were not specifically case study questions, they'll be like that. They'll all be like that. Yes, sir?
You just mentioned it. You're going to release another exam anytime soon?
Yeah, this next year, 2014, would have probably been released, except that there's no sense in releasing an exam with grid rule questions. So I know that the College Board is, aware that it needs to be done. So I'm guessing 2015. Yes?
This lab is an excellent opportunity to introduce regular expressions. Is there any consideration for adding regular expressions?
Not in this go-round of the, because we weren't going to do much change. That would, again, have to be something that colleges or universities say, hey, you need to teach this. But there's nothing wrong with you teaching it. And students are going to discover it, too, a lot of the time. That's exciting. They explore the code. They experiment. One of the exercises is tell me more about your pets if they use dog or cat. Well, you know what? You don't have to have 2 days of lecture on Boolean expressions and if statements to be able to copy that mother, father, sister, brother and change it to cat, dog, fish, bird. So I know that because my students did it. What makes this better then is then there's a part that says, well, let's think about some stuff. What if my mother has a dog but no cat? You want to know about my family or you want to know about my pets? Or what if I say my mother has dogs and cats? Then you only want to know about my family because you don't even recognize that we have pets. Or what about I know all the state capitals? Why so negative? You see it? Yeah. All right. And that's where students can start thinking about things. Oh, is there some priority? How should I be handling this so that we get the answer we want. Activity 3 intentionally has them look at an API, has them call methods, and this is a good place too for CodingBat. Those of you who aren't familiar with it, codingbat.com is an awesome practice place. There's also a Practice It out of the University of Wisconsin that is also awesome. But here is preparing for activity 4. So they go through, they're going to learn how to trace some code. I did that with a partner too. I like the keynote speaker said this morning, you know, pair them up for everything. I did because I wanted to do this fast. So I said, I want you to tell me, you know, where this changes and, you know, what lines get executed and what are the values of the variables, and work with a partner and talk it out. I had one group say, could we write the answers on a spreadsheet? If it doesn't take too long. Anyway, what if they have, I like cats, I like this, I like that. Wouldn't it be nice to, what do you like? Why do you like? Or anything, maybe not even just like. What kind of things do you say, or would you say, when we all have droids dusting our living rooms and stuff, to these machines, and what would they say back? So they have to start paying attention and think about their conversations. I know one pilot site, the teacher even had them do journaling and record their thoughts on a lot of this stuff. Here's activity 4. Now let's do these transforming statements. So when you want something, have it say, would you be really happy if you had? I want to hit the jackpot. I want to. What would it mean to whatever it is? I believe you. Why do you believe me? You annoy me. You got to be careful with these. Same thing. Good reason for them to analyze. Let them come up with some. These are the ones that are given to them, or at least they've got the headings for them. When I did this, I was just showing my class. I said, we're not going to do this one, but here's what the next step would be. And they're saying, we want to do it. So I typed in, you guys are killing me. Okay. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it picked up the you and the me. And it was something like, what makes you think that I guys are killing, or whatever. Yes?
Is it okay that I ask a
Yeah.
question? That was my question. So, how far are students expected to go in analyzing the input? Because this could become really unwieldy with types of punctuation.
Your schedule. No, they need to be able to process strings, basically. Oh, that's the next lab. Okay, and then number 5, activity 5, just has them use an array for random responses. And I just showed my class that because my class is a little different. We had already talked about what arrays were. And so they saw that and they said, oh, this is really easy, because it was an initializer list. So they just type and type and type. And pretty soon they have 350 random responses. So again, you don't have to officially teach that. I know in some of the pilots, the teachers taught up to this part and then came back after arrays to cover some topics with arrays. Okay, media computation is the next one. Some of you may recognize that. That is Captain Dave, as it says in the, but he's retired, I discovered, from being Captain Dave, I guess. What I did there was I used one of the activities in the picture lab to mirror the picture on the left vertically, and you see the results. I don't know which one looks meaner. There are quite a few different activities. What I did with my classes, I just spent basically one 50-minute class period, and I covered those first 3, along with some other things. I skipped the 2-dimensional arrays in Java because, as I said, this was kind of a pre-type course. And then I spent another 50 minutes on that number 5, modifying a picture. Now, the real focus of activity 5 is to learn some of those object-oriented concepts. I'm going to show you a little more about each of those, assuming we have time. And what I wanted us to do, I wanted you to all think about how you would use this so that we can have some discussion and I can get better ideas for next year and you all can come away with some ideas of how you might want to use this and try it a little bit next year. But even though that was supposed to be focusing on the object-oriented stuff, it had activities like zero blue, where you go through a picture and take out all the blue, or keep only blue, or negate. I don't remember all of them. Grayscale. That's where my kids just got into it. Can we do keep only red and keep only green? So you go for it. I had one girl, here's where my story comes in. A lady, a lot of you have girls in your classes. Is that getting better? That's what I'm hearing. So I'm teaching a college class. This is a brand new class. I actually advertised it, called it OOP Fun, Object-Oriented Programming Fundamentals. That sounds great. I want to take OOP Fun. Look at the class list, all male. We have a anti-late start policy on my campus, meaning that once a class has started, no one can sign up for it. My class started on Tuesday at 11:30. Remember back in college, you take Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, or you take Tuesday, Thursdays. Okay, Tuesday 11:30 is kind of the end. So I have office hours before that, and about 10 minutes after 11, there's a lady kind of standing outside my office. She's got my flyer. So I go out there to meet her, and she said, I was thinking about taking this class. I said, let's walk over to it. Anyway, we signed her up, and we were back by 11:30 to greet the boys, and she was just a ray of sunshine in that class. I would have not done so well. Anyway, she said, this is hard for me. I think that I want to learn how to program. I'm scared to take a programming class. That's why she was there. She's heard about all the things she would be able to do. She was scared. My class was just fun. Well, we get through, and we had talked about arrays, just kind of philosophically. And we had done the Magpie lab, like I said, the 2 days worth. And then we did this, we talked about this, and then I said, let's do some pictures. She was one who wanted to take the green out and take the red out, and I said, you go for it. She downloaded, we used Dr. Java in class. She downloaded Dr. Java. She downloaded all the files that she needed, the classes that were supplied. She worked on this and worked on this, and she went on the internet and she found out exactly what the combination or percentages were for sepia. She had so much fun with that. And she's taken, a friend of mine is actually teaching, she's taking what would be the CS1 now in the summer online. So, it's paid off for her. But the funny thing was, when we finish this, now we have to get back. Now we're going to do algorithms on lists and just, again, conceptually talk about it, what different ways to sort, different ways to search. She says, I really don't like arrays. That's what's going to kill me. And I said, how can you not like arrays? You have been processing two-dimensional arrays. She goes, no, I've been doing rows and columns. That doesn't count. And I said, you're going to be okay. So that's my story. That's what this gives you that maybe we didn't have before. So anyway, all kinds of beyond. I should have probably given her those things, but then she never would have gotten on with the rest of her life. There are other activities, enrichment activities that come with this. And this is kind of what it looks like. You have a color chooser. I'm going to go kind of quickly through this one because there is another lab. and I do want the discussion time. Exploring a picture, this is where they can just experiment with the different colors on there and see how the R, G, and B work together. This one is for those of us who have been teaching for a while and you're more comfortable with the array as arrays, and there are methods for a two-dimensional array. So you declare it, you create it, you get rows and columns, you traverse them. Just the regular two-dimensional array practice. As I said, I skipped that, so that poor girl thought she was doing rows and columns instead. This is kind of the class structure. They do mention UML diagrams. That's still not going to be tested as, you know, they need to understand UML. They need to understand the relationships, and that's why I have that on here. Okay, we have an interface, and a simple picture is an implementation of it, but they are going to use the picture class, which is a subclass of simple picture, to put all the methods that they write, like negate and keep blue only. The pixel class is supplied, and then of course there's the color. Color is not tested, but you know that some of my students, that was their favorite part of Grid World. You know, they could make random color bugs, and they could make color changing bugs. And then here they need to mirror the picture, they're just going to loop through rows and columns. You could have had them do a mirror with the two-dimensional array. That is actually what is happening to make it happen, but those are not arrays of integers. It's an array of pixels. Mirroring part of a picture, you just have to fix that top right corner of the roof. All right, just mirror the left corner. This one is a little more complicated than it looks from that graphic, but they're going to overload the copy method so that they can create a collage, copying and making it part of another one. And then simple edge detection. That's about as far as it gets in the student guide. Just to find the edges, they're using the distance formula to see how close certain colors are. But what they can do with that, or what your more, I don't want to say better students, but your more determined students, your more advanced students, steganography, hiding little messages. How hard is it to find that little message on the right side? That could be for your really advanced. Chroma key, they have what they use in the film industry, putting something into another shot. That's Mark. I've skipped over Mark and Barb. They are here. I saw them on my walk. They were walking around the building this way, and I was walking around the building the other way. From Georgia Tech, they're the ones who came up with the whole media computation, and Barb wrote the lab. And then we have 11s. Mike Clancy at the University of California at Berkeley, and I believe he was the one, and Stuart, you could probably tell me, who brought case studies to AP Computer Science. So it's kind of ironic and kind of good for the world of CS that he is writing one of the labs. And then Judy Romchek and Robert Glenn Martin in Dallas did a lot of the work on with this. And that's kind of what it looks like. You deal out cards, and the replace button is used when you find an 11. Like a 7 and a 4 add up to 11. So you'd click those two, they would highlight. I'll show you kind of what it looks like. Then you click replace, and those cards go out, and they deal new cards in their spot. This is basically what it looks like. For most of the work, there are some optional activities here. Students write a simple card class, just the value of the card and the suit of the card. And I'm thinking that those are both strings. And then there are a couple of methods, accessor methods, and there's a match method to tell if two cards match. There's a deck class, which has a list of cards. And then originally, you just have a board. But then again, you have the chance for some discussion about what would be a better design and what if I want a different kind of card game? Wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to rewrite the board all the time? So you end up with an abstract board and then the 11s board. And then students can very easily make a 13s board, and that's probably the more traditional solitaire game where you take away things that add up to 13. Another optional activity is to simulate running of these, and there's some statistical conversations that can go on. So there are 11 hours of activities, and starting from just designing, creating the classes, there's some discussion of shuffling, testing, unit testing type stuff with assertions, playing 11s, just getting them to use it, and then the design of the board and the optional activities of the other games. Let me go ahead and just run it. Oh, I think it's this one. There it is. All right, anybody see an 11? 9 and 2. And it has to be a 2-card 11, so 8, 2, and 1 wouldn't work. And thank you, I'm just not seeing it. 4 and 7. Now, the picture cards, those are a special case. I'm going to win it. How funny is that? You guys are good luck. How many are going to Las Vegas next? You laugh. Nobody else? Seriously? Oh. Yeah, the AP annual conference starts. Oh, okay. I was warned. Face cards, you have to have a Jack, Queen, and King, and you select all 3, and it removes. But anyway, that's the game, and as I said, the card class is pretty simple. Oh, there is a point value. And the deck class gets a little more complex. But it just has a list of cards and a size. And then the board class does most of the work, because if I were to make an 11-board object, there's only 2 new methods because they're all inherited from board. So when I go and do a 13, it's the same thing. I only have to do the new ones. Okay, good. Questions and comments? Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to put in some kind of a rubric on there so people know how to evaluate the answers to the solutions to the problems that students make for these labs?
You mean like the different activities? Probably not. I mean, personally, I'm not, and officially, I would say there won't be a rubric, but that's why we have the AP teacher community. I'm sure somebody will. It would be however you normally would grade a program. Don?
Just like now there are people that decide to use the case study to teach the entire course. If you were to focus on these 3 labs, would you say that that would prepare students for the entire test?
I think you would still need to do some other list type processing for sure. You know, more array list. Kind of, if you take a look at the 2013 exam, there were quite a few questions, and there was one with a 2-dimensional array that went backwards and forth. That was a good one, wasn't it, Rich? Anyway, that would be necessary to supplement and just design a new classes. You know, give them more object-oriented probably you'd still have to go into the math, meaning, you know, what's that percent sign? You know, the modulus, and there's always questions on that recursion. Now, Rich, you piloted. Do you say I know recursion came up in your comments. You didn't use the lab for recursion, or?
So I would not say that if I taught those 3 labs, my students would be prepared to take the exam.
Right.
But those 3 labs, I thought the string manipulations did a very nice job of preparing them for understanding how string works, what the methods for string were, and that I think did a good job of getting them ready for the test. The 2-dimensional array stuff is incredible. It was very motivational, and they loved manipulating the images. And then the 11 stuff, you know, I think one of the problems you have to be cautious of is if you already have card classes out there. Some of my students wrote card classes, did special projects, and then we got the labs late in our process, and they'd already seen classes, and that kind of confused them, that they already knew what a card class looked like, and the new card
And it
class
wasn't
different.
that. Okay.
And so that caused some problems. So you kind of have to look in advance what you normally do in your course, and now what does this do, and what's going to supplement, and what's going to be. But yeah, you definitely have to supplement your course with other things besides just the 3 labs.
Yes.
Two questions. First of all, right now there's the 4 free response questions on the test. There's still going to be a 4 free response question.
Yes.
One of them is grid roll. Will now one of them change to anything specific, or?
No, it would be pretty much, you know, like the other 3 have been. There may be something on design. There may be something on processing list. There may be something, a few years ago, there was one where they had to do some analysis of code and, you know, would this work for this situation? Would that work? So it's just like what we've done in the past without the specific grid world.
And then does AP, are they scheduling any training sessions, refresher sessions for next year for teachers in training?
You mean as consultants, or just to train, besides the summer institutes?
I guess there's going to be a lot of people that could use, I mean, this 1 hour has been helpful.
Oh.
We could use a one
Specifically on the labs, yes, I'm sure there will be. There was supposed to be, when these originally were intended to be implemented this coming fall, and June 18th was the date on the schedule for a online training day, and then that was canceled, and I'm sure, so just watch for it. There'll be an announcement on the teacher community. There was somebody, yes?
Will your slides be available online?
I'm sure they will be. I was going to put them someplace and give you the URL, but then I realized the last couple of years the whole conference is available. So, yes, sir.
I'm trying to figure out how required versus optional the labs are. I mean, my understanding is that students aren't going to be asked specific questions the way they were with Grid World about the contents of the labs. So it's important to cover the concepts, but not necessarily within the labs themselves. So, for example, let me just give a hypothetical teacher. Suppose there was a teacher who had their own materials that they liked. They, say, had a thing called Grid World that they liked a lot, and that they wanted to use to teach certain concepts, and it teaches lots of the concepts of the 2nd and 3rd lab, and they augmented that with maybe string processing and a little more 2D array.
Mm-hmm.
Those students would seem to be well prepared to answer questions that the other ones asked. So is that something where basically College Board would say that's okay? We don't necessarily recommend it, but I mean, isn't that kind of what the sense is, though, is that the test will be on the concept.
Exactly.
And there are many AP courses that could be approved with an audit that do not include these 3 labs.
That's what we're waiting to have that final decision on. How it's the audit that would determine. They will have to have in their syllabus or on this form, I am teaching these 3 labs that cover these concepts and take this amount of time, and I don't remember off the top of my head what the specific details are. But right, you're certifying to the College Board that it's an AP course, so it has these lab experiences.
But it could have alternate experiences?
It could have alternate lab experiences. Yes.
I understand what you're saying, because there's sample syllabi.
And there will be new samples.
Okay.
By the time, probably in February when these are released, there will be new samples.
Well, let me recommend that. I do think it would be useful to have a sample syllabus that had Grid World as a central thing, because I think many teachers have liked it and will want to continue to use it.
I will mention that. I'm going to guess that that's probably not going to happen because, but, you know, I can see, especially for the design part, it does cover a lot of the same thing. Yes.
Just starting out this year, doesn't have AP yet, so I'll be asking her non-question as to what we're teaching it. My classes teach in the semester or our semester level. I assume that the fall ones can't have an AP test associated. What could I do with the spring ones?
Oh,
Do I have to?
they can. Is it a 90-minute block? 80, well, okay. Yeah, I used to teach when I taught high school, I had 90 minutes, and sometimes I just had the fall course, and then you can teach it, and you just stay on those kids and say, we need to have a study session, or you need to be doing coding bat, or you need to be practicing.
So
Yeah.
they can still
They can still
take the test.
take the test. Yeah, this test is going to be offered in the spring. Yes.
So, I thought the new AP exam was supposed to be language independent, but I see that this is.
There's a new course,
This is
CS Principles, that's still 3 or 4 years away. Right now, the only test is the one that is tested in Java.
Okay, so eventually
There will be a second course.
that would be,
Yes, and this course is Java for the foreseeable. 5 minutes? Okay. So. Oh, did you get that on tape? That's good.
Can you take that to CS Principles? Because I offer a lot of the course that is going to be doing CS Principles.
That's going to be up to, you know, the universities your students go to and the degrees they want and what course is being, what credit they can earn from, because they're 2 separate courses.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, if I offer fall CS Principles.
Oh, sure.
I know I can use portfolios and just hold on to qualifications and exam.
Yeah, you could teach it any time during the year, and they just take the exam in May. Yeah, the 5 minutes was the 5 minutes before we're done. So, all right, let's move on before I say something else that's going to get me fired. This was where you can get more information. Oh, no, this is on earning continuing education credits. I'm sorry, I thought this was on, well, there's where you can write if you have comments on it. If you don't want to fill out one of those little sheets, or you don't want the first page of that little sheet that was handed out and somebody around you does, maybe you could share them. But I do need you to fill out so the College Board knows I'm here before they hear about the boo-boo. And no, they only gave me a few, but not everybody wants. Can I hold yours up for a second? Yeah, what I need is this part back. And this part has information on becoming an AP reader, becoming a College Board endorsed consultant, serving on the AP Development Committee, conducting AP research, or participating in a standard setting. I will do that. I had it on this slide, I thought. There it is. Yeah. There's the date, my name. Ciezki. Yeah, that's true. I should probably make a point of that. It's like chess, the game, and key, like you used to use to get into your car and house. And
Any
So-
final